and welcome back to the Expansion Room. I'm your host, Shervon Larice, and this week we continue our discussion about mental health approaches, holistic mental health approaches that we can weave into our daily lives and help to balance our mental health as well as bring about more well-being into our lives. And so today we are going to be talking about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, integrating mindfulness practices and specifically yoga, meditation practices, as well as breath work. And the reason I wanted to bring this in is that I've been a certified yoga teacher since 2012. And early in my training as a psychotherapist, and early in the days of me starting to work with clients in private practice as well as in community mental health spaces, I realized that talk therapy in and of itself was not always going to be enough for people who were living with or dealing with trauma, traumatic experiences that they had had in their lives, and some who were exhibiting PTSD, right? And you could do all the talking in the world, but as we've already talked about in at least a couple of episodes before, trauma resides not only in our minds, but also in our bodies. And so we have to find ways in order to release that energy so that we can move forward in our lives successfully. So I started looking for somatic practices that would pair well with psychotherapy. And I had already been practicing yoga off and on in my life. My first yoga class was as a teenager, and I believe it was junior year. My school, Forest Hills High School in Queens, shout out to Forest Hills, offered yoga in place of gym. And I kind of hated gym. So I was like, I'll take that class. They sent me home with a little notice to give to my mom to sign. She signed it, and I took a semester of yoga. And I didn't know what yoga was all about, but I did walk away from that class realizing I liked it, but didn't know why. Fast forward some years later, past college, or in college rather, I was introduced to meditation. And didn't really understand it fully at that time, but I realized I liked it, right? And so I get into my 20s and I step back into yoga, I think at a gym or somewhere, because yoga studios were not plentiful yet. And I enjoyed taking yoga, but I noticed every time I moved, as you do in your 20s, you move a lot, I would lose my connection to wherever I was taking yoga. And this went on into my 30s. And I moved to DC some years later and made a deal with myself that the yoga studio that I stepped into, if I liked it there and was consistent for a year, I would take the yoga teacher training that was being offered there. And that was back in 2011. And lo and behold, I did that for a year and they offered, almost as if they heard me make this deal with the universe, right on time, a yoga teacher training. So I signed up, I took the training, and that was my first entree into the teaching of this practice that I had come to love off and on in my lifetime. Um, I still had not made the connection yet to mental health. And so I finished the training, started teaching at that studio and one or two other places. And it was while I was at work one day. I was working for the federal government in law enforcement and realized one day that I was holding my breath. Like there was a level of anxiety within me that caused me to hold my breath. I took a deep inhale in and a really long, slow exhale out, allowed my shoulders to relax, and it shifted something within me and therefore shifted the rest of my day. And in that moment, it dawned on me that I could bring these practices into my work with my talk therapy clients. So by that time, I had a part-time psychotherapy practice that I was doing 2 or 3 nights a week. I would see some clients when I left my full-time government job. And so I started incorporating the breath work. And I started offering that to my clients who exhibited mostly anxious tendencies and found relief just like I did. And so I started looking for a yoga therapy program, knowing that I would need to go deeper than my original yoga teacher training. So it took me a while, and I found a program that really resonated with me, and it was based in upstate New York, Breathing Deeply Yoga, and moved through that program and learned some beautiful things that I could be able to apply in a therapeutic way in working with anyone. But my main interest was to work with people who had depression, anxiety, PTSD, you name it, in the mental health field. And I completed that training back in 2018 or 19. And since then, I have been working with people using breath work, yoga nidra, meditation, and what we consider in the United States as yoga, but in the larger yoga world, we call it asana. It's the movement of your body on a mat, on a yoga mat. And so I've really enjoyed being able to bring that somatic work in because it has helped people with managing trauma, managing PTSD. I worked with a client who had a flashback in the middle of working with her, just doing psychotherapy. She had a flashback one day at home, and we switched from doing just talk therapy and added one of these mindfulness practices called Yoga Nidra, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. And in doing so, was able to effectively help her to get back to a place of balance over a few weeks without her having to change her medication dose, which she did not want to do, right? And so that really, having that experience early on in my certification really sealed the deal for me that somatic work is so important to our mental well-being, our mental harmony, our mental balance. So today we will explore things like yoga, meditation, breath work that can help us transform our minds and bodies. And these are not just quote unquote spiritual practices, but they are also evidence-based, powerful tools that help us to manage stress, anxiety, calm our nervous system, help us to manage depression, and help us to move trauma out of our bodies, through our bodies. Um, Whether or not you're a mental health professional, or whether or not you're on your own healing journey, whether or not you even have your own therapist, or you're just curious about these practical ways that you can ground and enliven your body, this is the episode for you. So let's dive into the definition itself of mindfulness. So many of us have heard this word kind of bantered about for the longest time, probably the better 15 or 20 years. And we don't always talk about what the definition of that is. And so mindfulness in the basic definition is present moment awareness without judgment. It's your ability to come back to the present moment and without judgment, be aware or the observer. It's the ability to watch your thoughts or tune into your emotions or the feeling sense or tensions within your body without cringing, contracting, without judging, but being a curious witness or a curious observer, because that helps you then you're taking kind of a broader look at yourself almost from the outside in, and it gives you information. And it eventually helps you make the shifts you need in your body. So when we practice yoga asana on the mat, teachers will often cue people to come back to their breath as they move through the poses. Why? Because coming back to the breath brings you back to the present moment. When we sit for meditation, one of the most popular styles of meditation is focusing in on the breath, because it drops us out of our head back into our bodies, and you're paying attention to the present moment. When we do things like yoga nidra, it enables you to come out of your thought process down into the body and relax so that you come to the space of healing between, say, wakefulness and sleep. So all of these practices together enable us to come to the present moment. So now our yoga and meditation and breath work the only mindfulness practices out there? Absolutely not. There are so many things that we can do with that same idea of dropping into the present centered moment. I know people who are avid runners who get into that space, other kind of athletic activity that allow them to get into that space. Um, there are other traditions that allow people to get or invite people to get into that space. But I know yoga. And so this is what we'll be talking about today. Um, some of the benefits of mindfulness practices is that it helps to reduce stress, anxiety, and depression. It helps to improve your emotional regulation and your resilience. It enhances clarity, focus, and your own self-compassion. It's interesting how if you tune into the thoughts moving through your mind and you pay attention to the thoughts about yourself in particular, how often people notice that they're not being kind to themselves, that they're not being as kind to themselves as they might be to a friend or a child. So self-compassion is part of this. Mindfulness in therapy is being integrated into therapy styles like cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, and acceptance and commitment therapy. And all of those incorporating mindfulness practices are really great for people working through trauma. So in my practice, I'm usually using a combination of CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, and mindfulness practices. So when we come back, after the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about mindfulness and then step into the benefits of yoga asana, moving your body on the mat, and then we'll go from there. Come back after the break.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a purpose-driven individual looking for deeper healing, clarity, and growth? Welcome to the Expansion Room, a transformative space for purpose-driven individuals. I'm Siobhan Larice, host, licensed therapist, and coach. Join me every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back. Today we are talking about integrating mindfulness into our mental health care. And one of the things that I do is integrate yoga practices and yoga techniques into the work that I do in my psychotherapy practice at Restore Tranquility. And I primarily use cognitive behavioral therapy techniques to work with clients, primarily around depression, anxiety, PTSD. That is one of the most researched and effective approaches of therapy for the conditions that I just mentioned. And it often helps people to identify and challenge their negative thoughts, their negative thought patterns, and also to drop in to understand how those thoughts then affect their emotions and their actions. And then we work together to replace those thoughts with healthier thought patterns. So in combining those two, you have deeper benefits to your healing work. Mindfulness teaches us to notice our thoughts, our emotions, and our body sensations without judgment. So you can see where bringing the two of those things together can be an ultimate benefit for someone who's in therapy. When we think about depression and anxiety, we often think about the ways that people can worry and ruminate on something. There's this old saying that depression is oftentimes something that we're ruminating, in some ways, ruminating on things from the past, and anxiety is ruminating on things yet to come in our future. And so mindfulness work and CBT work together helps to bring someone back to the present moment. In the present moment, we find relief from that kind of worry, from those kinds of unhelpful thoughts, right? The integration supports both the mind and our central nervous system, making healing much more embodied and resilient and lasting. And this is the kind of therapy that I love to do. This is the kind of therapy I love to offer people. Now, yoga asana movement, right? In our very first episode of the expansion room, we talked about the benefits of movement for our bodies. And it can be 10 minutes at a time, right? So it's the same with yoga. Traditionally, yoga in a yoga studio or at a gym is usually about a 45-minute to 60-minute class. When I got into yoga as an adult, it was way longer than that. Classes used to be an hour and a half. And it was not uncommon to connect with a yoga studio that did a series. So you would sign up for like a semester and you knew how many classes you were going to take in that time frame. There were no such things of drop-in classes like there are now. And I do hear some of the older folks in the yoga community complain about that because it feels like people are not committed to their yoga practice. But even a shorter drop-in class can be of benefit. And nowadays, you can do yoga at home using YouTube for free. And you can add any type of yoga practice into your life. You just have to choose. All right. So, some of the benefits of yoga asana for mental health are it helps you to release stored tension and trauma in the body. Think about what we talked about a couple of episodes ago. The body keeps the score, right? And how our central nervous system makes more of the neurotransmitters that we call our feel good transmitters in our digestive system rather than in the brain. And so, in moving in these conscious, present centered ways, we give our bodies permission to release tension, trauma. It helps us to build self awareness and embodiment, regulates the vagus nerve, and reduces symptoms of anxiety. And a practical application is gentle grounding postures, right? It doesn't have to be a lot. One of the things I tell people when they're super stressed, and there are a lot of stressed out people right now, especially where I live. I live just outside of Washington, D.C., and people are stressed. And one of the things I tell people, yoga doesn't have to be a long practice. You can literally get on the mat into child's pose and then flip over and go right into Shavasana. It's the conscious awareness that you bring to the practice. It's the tuning into your body and breath while you're there so that it helps to calm your central nervous system, right? So, a gentle grounding posture can be child's pose, it can be any forward fold. An energizing practice, if you tend to be more on the chronic fatigued side or depressed expression, is sun salutations. Sun salutations wake up the body. Any kind of a heart opener or a back bend can help energize the body. Yoga therapy in the clinical contents supports PTSD, trauma in particular, and chronic stress, depression, and ongoing anxiety. One of the things that I think, I mean, we talk about this in yoga class oftentimes, older teachers and those who do offer yoga teacher trainings, we have this saying, their issues are in the tissues. Our bodies hold on to things. And when we move in conscious ways, we invite our bodies to release. We allow our bodies to release. One of the things I remember, I don't remember which year it was, but it was September. And the acknowledgement of 9/11 had come around. And, I grew up in New York City. I still have family in New York City. And I was sitting in a yoga class and we were moving through whatever flow that the teacher was teaching. And we got to a pose that invited a hip opening practice. I think it was pigeon. And for the first time, I experienced what that statement meant. The issues are in the tissues, because we were at least, this had to be 2013, maybe 14, and I started crying. And I hadn't really been thinking that much about the approaching date for 9/11, but my body was keenly aware of that date approaching. And I have seen that happen over and over again in my teaching with people when they get to certain poses, how it can release emotion. And sometimes people are apologetic, and I always say, no, 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 that was obviously something that needed to come up, right? Our symptoms are just halfway out when we notice them. And we, as the individual, just need to be in the space of allowing, the space of present moment awareness, to just let it move through. And so that is part of what yoga can do for us. It can allow us to let those emotions that we store within us to move through. Sometimes we experience traumas, either little traumas or big traumas, and we don't allow our bodies to fully experience and pass through the emotions that come up. There's something interesting in science that they did some years ago, where they researched animals and how they, if they've been chased, like a deer or a fawn has been chased by a bigger animal that wanted to eat them, when they get to safety, they stand for a minute and literally shake their entire bodies as if they're shaking it off. And then they walk away and go on about their business. Something in how we've evolved as humans, we have forgotten how to do that. And so we oftentimes hold on to the negative experiences that we've had in our lives, instead of letting them move through us. So movement helps us to be able to release and allow those things to let go. All right. So we're about to take our next break. And when we come back, we'll be talking about meditation and my favorite practice, Yoga Nidra. So come on back.
Misalignment within your sales team or with a client stalls deals and creates unnecessary friction for you and the client, resulting in up to 37% lower win rate. If you're in pre-sales, sales management, or sales enablement, and you'd like to increase revenues, win rate, margins, client satisfaction, and stay competitive, this show is for you. Hi, I'm Art Fromm, host of the Making Seamless Sales Show. Please join me live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the Nonprofit Sector Connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marcanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the expansion room, where today we're talking about integrating mindfulness practices such as yoga, meditation, and breath work into our mental health care. And so right now we're focused on meditation. And meditation is something that I stepped into and started to really understand myself through it. I began to understand how my mind works. And I think that is so helpful for everyone, is to understand how your mind works, so that you can make whatever adjustments you need for your own mental health. And so for some people I hear who maybe have tried a little bit of meditation and found that it was quote unquote hard. They say, oh my, I can't calm my brain or quiet my brain down in order to meditate. And meditation is not about not thinking or calming your brain down. It is really about focused attention. That's all it is. Our brains are going to do what they do. They are designed to do what they do. And so for many of us in these modern times is we're all experiencing some level of ADD. We are struggling to keep our attention at all turns, right? Because of the internet, social media, the news, all the different aspects of our lives that are tugging at us that need our attention. So it's not, and I want to encourage you, as well as I encourage so many clients, it is not about the quieting of your mind. It's more about paying attention to what your mind is doing. What are the themes that you notice that permeate your thoughts, right? So when I sit for meditation, and this has always been, right? It's a little better now that I've gotten older, but it has always been there. I am a lean into the future type person. I have lists running in my head, the things to do running in my head. If I'm sitting for meditation, inevitably my mind will go, when I get up from this, I'm going to do da 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 da. Oh yeah, I got to remember to call so and so for this. I got to remember to do that. I am one of those people, right? And then I usually chuckle because this has been going on for years. And then I take a breath and come back down, right? So it's having focused attention. And usually having focused attention on something can help, right? So that you don't get lost in the stream of thoughts, right? You just become the observer of those thoughts. So if you have focused attention on the breath, when you realize the thoughts have risen up and you are paying attention to them, you can bring your attention back to your breath. For some people, they like to have a picture that they focus on, or a chant that they focus on. So chants are usually called mantras, and they are sounds or words that are put together to help our brains focus on something. Pictures, certain kinds of pictures are called yantras, and it helps you to visually focus on something. But it could be as simple as you have a beautiful plant in your house and that's what you focus on. Some people do more of a broader spatial awareness for their meditation, and they tune in to maybe the hum of their HVAC system in their home or space wherever they are, or the sounds they hear just outside their window, right? Either way, whatever you choose, it's focused attention. It's allowing yourself to step back from the stream of thoughts and allow them to move through you, kind of like cartoon bubbles or clouds. Open awareness is broader, and then closed or more focused awareness is more either in your space, what you're looking at, what you're listening to, or what you're experiencing inwardly. And all of those forms of meditation are valid. Loving kindness meditation and other compassionate practices are still very interesting to me. So for years, even after I did my first yoga teacher training, um, and studied a little bit about Buddhism, uh, which actually helped me better understand the faith that I grew up in, which is Christianity, but that's for a whole nother episode. Um, I kept coming across this thing called loving kindness meditation. And I was just like, seriously? And I avoided it for the longest until I started my yoga therapy training, and it was a whole module with homework. And I then had to sit down and do this practice because I already knew that I didn't always speak kindly to myself in my head, but I didn't feel like that was a big deal. Learning that practice and being able to hold space and compassion within myself, not only for the people I love in my life, but also for myself, was a game changer. It really shifted even how I take care of myself. So that's a wonderful practice that I invite anyone to step into. And there are details about how to do that practice. One of my favorite people who teaches loving kindness meditation is Sharon Salzberg, who is a Buddhist teacher. And I think she's either from New York or lived in New York, something of that nature. So check her out. Um, some of the mental health benefits of meditation are changes in your brain structure, neuroplasticity, which we've talked about in past episodes. It increases your emotional resilience and your inner calm. Meditation can help calm or reduce the sense of rumination and the experience of trauma triggers. Now, yoga nidra is my favorite form of meditation. It is what we also have nicknamed yogic sleep because you do it lying down. You don't have to sit up for this. You can literally lay down on your yoga mat. You can lay down on a bed, lay down on the floor, cot, but it is reclined. I get a chance to teach this practice every Sunday evening in my yin yoga class. We end with 20 to 25 minutes of yoga nidra. And it is an invitation to allow your parasympathetic nervous system to rise and your sympathetic nervous system to relax. When you're doing yoga nidra, you're in the space between wakefulness and sleep. Your mind is still alert, but your body is super relaxed. And it is usually a guided meditation. Someone talks you through that practice. And it allows you to relax the body, relax the mind, relax your inner energy, right? Calm your thoughts. And in that space, when your parasympathetic nervous system arises, that's the space of healing. That's the space where our bodies can release trauma. Our central nervous system is complex, but there are two main parts of it that we experience. The sympathetic, which is our fight, flight, or freeze, and that is action oriented. When we leave the house, when we're doing things, when we're taking the train or we're at work, we're engaging with other people, that's the side of our nervous system that's activated. It is also the side of our nervous system that's always on guard if you have PTSD or if you have a high level of anxiety, right? Then we have the other side, which is our parasympathetic nervous system. It's our rest, relax, and digest part of our nervous system. And it doesn't get activated enough. So in Yoga Nidra, there is an invitation just by doing the practice, just by laying there and listening, that allows the body to relax in this space and to let go. And in the letting go, healing happens. Trauma is released, anxiety is decreased, right? Also, one of the things that I have done for myself with Yoga Nidra and have been able to offer to other people who have autoimmune issues, because autoimmune diseases, autoimmune diagnoses are oftentimes rooted or at least exacerbated by stress. And when you do a regular Yoga Nidra practice and you lower the experience of stress in your body by stepping into the parasympathetic nervous system, you experience less symptoms of that autoimmune disease. That has been my experience. I have also had that experience with clients. So Yoga Nidra is powerful and really the main reason why I find it to be my favorite mindfulness practice. It's a guided relaxation, bringing the body into deep rest, which is why people call it yogic sleep. It is not uncommon for people to fall asleep in Yoga Nidra. It's okay if it happens. They probably needed the sleep anyway. There is also evidence that it helps to improve people's sleep, besides helping them to improve mental health states. Also, it is accessible as a meditation practice where other traditions of meditation may not be. So if you feel like you want to give that a try, there are tons of Yoga Nidra practices that are on meditation apps and YouTube. But specifically for trauma, PTSD, anxiety, even depression, there are several that are really specific. And if you work with a yoga therapist, they will offer that. So we're about to take our final break. And when we come back, we will talk about breathwork, which is a powerful tool that we're starting to hear more and more about. So come on back.
On Frank About Health, we're not just talking healthcare. We're managing disruption and innovation. Over the last 4 years, I've taken you from epilepsy and COVID to mental health, caregiving, and now the front lines of healthcare transformation. Stay tuned for a healthier future as we bring on the innovators, professionals, storytellers, and advocates who show you how to own your healthcare every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
Ready to serve up success with a splash? Hi, I'm Bruce Kramer, a.k.a. the Corporate Cockroach.
I'm the Renaissance woman, Angie Snowball.
And I'm your strategy doctor, Dr. Navtej Desange, inviting you to serving up success with a splash.
Join us as we shake things up with real talk and real strategies centered around awareness, action, and accountability.
And yes, there really is a cocktail involved. Please join us and sip your way to success.
Serving up success with a splash, where wisdom meets happy hours. Cheers!
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 You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to the expansion room. And we've been talking about mindfulness for this episode. And in this segment, we'll be talking about breath work and the importance of integrating breath work into our mental health care. And so when people think about breath work, they're like, well, we breathe naturally, right? But when we bring conscious awareness or present moment awareness to our breath, it changes things. Our breath is our link. Checking in with your breathing can give you so much information about how you might be feeling in any given moment. So I gave that example at the beginning of this episode where I was sitting at my desk in my previous government job and I realized I was not breathing. Like I was literally holding my breath and felt anxious. And when I let that breath go, when I exhaled, I could feel the energy shift within me. Right. And so that is part of the work that I do. And that was the first thing I started to incorporate in my psychotherapy practice was breath work. And now we're hearing more and more about breath work, and some of that is like there's science behind it now. One of the most famous people on YouTube in reference to breath work is Wim Hof and the work that he does. But the work that I do around breath work with my clients is not as extreme as that. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the types of breath work that can be helpful in your day-to-day management of mental health. All right, so the breath is our direct link between our nervous system and our emotional state. So always remember that checking in with your breathing is going to give you information. Types of breath work, calming ones. So usually the first breath practice I teach is the 4-to-4 ratio. Inhaling to the count of 4, exhaling to the count of 4. It's just a very balanced way of breathing. The other way is inhaling to the count of 4, exhaling to the count of 6 or 8. Always remember the longer your exhales, the more ability you have to calm your stress response, to calm anxiety, and to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So there's some truth to this idea that when we inhale, we activate our sympathetic nervous system, and when we exhale, we activate our parasympathetic nervous system. It's not quite as simple as that, but for this, we'll talk about it in that way. We spend so much time in our sympathetic nervous system. One of the simplest things we can do is to activate the parasympathetic side by exhaling longer, right? When I teach that practice to people, usually around third or fourth, maybe fifth time that they exhale that long, they start to yawn. And yawning is a sign that the parasympathetic nervous system has been activated or is starting to be activated. So those are two calming breaths. They help with anxiety and stress. There's another breath practice that was, I believe, made popular by Dr. Andrew Weil, the 4-7-8 breath practice, inhaling to the count of 4, holding for the count of 7, exhaling to the count of 8. There's also what they call the box breath, which is more about balancing or harmonizing the breath, which is you inhale to the count of 4, hold to the count of 4, exhale to the count of 4, and then hold the breath out to the count of 4. So you create basically a box with that, right? And so those are some examples of calming and balancing breath practice. Another balancing breath practice that I learned early on in my yoga teacher training was Nadi Shodhana. And you usually use other fingers, but I'll just use the thumb and the index, closing one nostril, and you breathe out, and then you inhale through that nostril, you close that nostril, and you breathe out the other side. You breathe in, you breathe out, you breathe in, you breathe out. It is a balancing breath for sure. You do feel very balanced once you're done. But I also know that there's no other way that you can be lost in thought trying to do that breath practice, because you're trying to make sure that you're moving the breath through the nostrils in a way that gets you right out of your head. Right? There's also a number of energizing breath practices, right? And one that we talk about in yoga is called Kapalabhati, and it is the breath of fire. And it's great for when you have low energy or you're feeling more depression symptoms than not. So the mental health benefits to breath practices and bringing them into your life on a regular, if not daily basis, is that it helps to shift you from fight, flight, or freeze into your relaxed rest and digest. It improves your mental focus and emotional stability, and it can help you release suppressed emotions and move through trauma in a safe way. One way to integrate this is just 3 minutes a day of conscious breathing, even if it's just sitting down and tuning into your breath. It helps to train or retrain your central nervous system for more balance. It can shift mood, it can shift mindset, definitely shift your energy. So there you have it. These are the ways in which I bring mindfulness practices into my life and into the work that I do with clients. I think that one way to bring these practices into your life is to just choose one. Choose one thing that you will explore and explore it for only 10 minutes a day and see what it brings to your life. See what it adds to your life. Maybe during the time in the evening when you're doom scrolling or going into that second hour or third hour of television, we're all guilty, you can pause and do one of these practices, right? You can start your day in the morning with a little bit of yoga stretching on a mat, or coming to a seated position and taking a few rounds of breath practice, and then 5 minutes of meditation before you get your day going, and see how it feels. Really simple. So I want to thank you very much for watching this episode and joining me for this particular topic, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. And I hope that something that I talked about today will help you to make a shift in your life, in your mental health practice, right? Healing is not about doing everything all at once. It is about consistency. It's about bringing in the small things, the small steps, letting go of something so that you can bring in something else to help you return to a space of balance, equilibrium, harmony, or peace. If you found today's episode helpful, I would encourage you to pass it on to a friend or loved one that you think might be benefiting from it. And I hope that you join me in the future for more episodes of The Expansion Room. If you'd like to get in touch and learn more about ways to incorporate these practices into your life, you can reach out. Restore Tranquility is where you can find me either at my website or on social media. Thanks. I'll see you next week.